Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Southerners Northern Garden. It wasn't a terribly productive weekend, kinda in some instances. Saturday was more productive than Easter Sunday, of course. I got the fountain running, which I'm really excited about, next to this tree when it starts leafing out and blooming. I got the hydrangeas pruned, as you will see or did see in a video. Not all of them, but a bunch of them, because it's been rather cold, and I think this is potentially our last cold spell. The temperatures are supposed to be as high as 80 something this coming weekend, which I am going to start hardening off my plants tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to bring them outside, and if the weather still looks pretty good, and start the hardening off process to get acclimated for the next coming weeks. That doesn't mean I'll get things planted out yet, but I want to show you the progress that I made Saturday to the garden space over here on the south side. So a lot of you just watched the video of all the plants that I'm going to be adding to the garden this year and thought there were some great selections, but this is the area that I extended this weekend. You can see I ended up bringing it out about another foot to a foot and a half, and so the bed is 5 foot deep. I wanted to do 6 foot, but if I did 6 foot, it would just bring this area. I needed to keep this open so I could get the cart back here, and it would just bring this out a little further than I wanted. And so this is going to come out, this metal edging, and I got to edge this area. But this Friday or Saturday, the irrigation company is supposed to be coming to trench a line from there up through here. And that was my primary purpose of getting this bed extended, so I would know where they could trench that line. I've got plants laid out. These are the Boxwoods, the sprinter Boxwoods I've had a couple years. If anyone knows what's wrong with these Boxwoods, I would love to hear it. It kind of looks like spider mite. This happened 2 winters ago. I actually brought these and kept these inside in my basement, and before they got in the basement, they looked perfectly fine. So I think it is just a irrigation issue, and that they don't like these smaller containers that they're in. So I'm actually going to be planting these out, both that one and that one down there, and I'm just going to do a trio here of the 3 Boxwoods. This one is a sprinter that was left over from last year's project. It appears that every one of the sprinters that I planted in the ground last year, which was probably close to 70 to 80 plants maybe, survived. And so no issues having to replace that one, and so I'm just going to do a trio here. Actually, when I originally picked up this Boxwood topiary, I was going to put it here where this container is, but I may stick it here in this garden. So as in other areas of my garden, this is also all going to be flower bed. You can actually see the bed, as I mentioned I was going to be doing, and so it just kind of connects to this one here. There's going to be a stone path to the shed, and then perennials planted on either side. But I'm thinking about sticking this boxwood here for some height entrance along this path that will have perennials next to it, and underplanting it. But let me know if you think it should go here, or if I should stick it in this area. I would really like some upward height here as well, but I'm going to be planting that rose that I mentioned in my video, the Rise Up Lilac, on this fence. I'm not sure exactly where yet, but right there might be a good location. But I'm also probably going to be planting some sunflowers that I picked up from Sunflower Steve seeds and zinnias for some height just along the back of the corner, at least for this first year, because all of these perennials are going to be really tiny, and so we're going to need some nice flower power to make up for that. I expect some of these perennials will actually grow on quite well, especially the ones I'm getting in bare roots, but the ones that I'm getting plugs are, which is a majority of what I'm getting, will probably take a good year to get settled in. But I am also going for a cottagey style, and those will be planted extremely heavily, and so the spacing on them will be really close. And so I'm going to run, I may run 3 lines of drip or 2 in the space. Like I mentioned, a lot of them are drought tolerant, and I'm going to have a sprinkler head right here in this corner, and then on the corner up there. It won't necessarily cover the beds or go into it, but if I needed to turn it a little bit, they could get a little more water that way as well. And so Probably 2 to 3 lines of drip irrigation. Nothing very sophisticated, especially enough to water the shrubs is what I'm primarily concerned about. The perennials are pretty good at fending for themselves after they get planted and watered in well. This mulch is also not my favorite. It's not as finely ground as I typically like, but it was on sale, and so I picked it up because the thing I do like about this mulch is it doesn't break down so quickly. So you can see the comparison here of the bulk mulch that I usually buy and how thin it is. This just turns pretty much into soil extremely quickly and requires being redone more often. And so I put down, I will show you a picture, and you can actually see right here the contractor's paper to expand this bed. You can also use cardboard, but I found this works really well. Contractor's paper is relatively inexpensive, and it comes on a really long roll, and I just roll it out and put mulch on top of it, wet it down, and then it will break down over the coming season really well. That is the way I've done all my beds for the past year, was basically kind of the no dig method without adding compost. I just put directly shredded mulch on top of it. I didn't do that method in this area, and I still have grass coming up, and so especially if you have a really pervasive grass like bluegrass like I have currently, I'm adding turf type 𝗏𝗏𝗃 in the coming week to my lawn. But the no dig method works really well, and I would heavily promote that method. As far as edging, I have an entire video on how I edged this bed last year, and I will link it below if you're interested in how to get, you know, these nice edged lines, but there's not a whole lot to it. The garden itself is starting, we had a little bit of cold snap that kind of slowed things down, but it's really starting to kick it into high gear. The tree that I picked up from 𝗍𝗟𝗃𝗧𝗦, the evening light styrax, is actually starting to produce leaves, which is really encouraging. All of these roses are putting on a lot more growth and showing a lot more growth here. We also had really good results with all of these allium bulbs that I planted, and so those look really awesome and will be coming up here soon. I don't see any buds yet, but it's really encouraging that they're doing so well even though the soil is really heavy. I'm pretty sure I lost some of the heuchera that I planted as plugs. I'm going to give them a little longer to come around, but some of them are doing really well, and then some of them are almost non-existent and not showing any growth. So it's still a little cool. We'll give them a time to show up, but I know I lost several of them already, you can tell. The peonies are coming up. The maples that I planted last year, the Japanese maples, are starting to get leaves on them. It's just a really exciting time in the garden with all this life. I did get the clematis planted. This is the one where I planted the one called Arabella. I kind of decided to stick it here next to this gate, and it will grow up here. This is a Glow Girl spirea, and this thing has been abused in this container and hardly watered for the past 2 years, and it is still just trying its hardest. I am definitely removing it from this container and sticking it in the landscape this year, and cutting out all of this dead, because it's a really beautiful shrub. I just bought it because I saw it and I had wanted it, and I didn't have anywhere to place it at the time, and it's just stayed in this container all this time. So I may end up sticking it right here. I'm not sure yet, but I do have a lilac that I purchased that did not seem to fare well over winter and is not coming back. So I'm going to stick it maybe right here, or find something else to stick right here. I would like to replace it with another dwarf lilac because I don't have any lilacs in my garden. I would prefer a 𝗍𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗦 variety by Proven Winners, just because they bloom in the spring and then rebloom again in the summer, or late summer, early fall. And so I need to pick up a dwarf 𝗍𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗦. That is the second dwarf 𝗍𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗦 that I have killed in my garden. So maybe third time's a charm. One of the great things about this pergola that I have not shared, or not really shared, is how I am going to be using it to harden off my plants. So previously, it's been kind of annoying, but I take all of my seedlings directly out of the basement and stick them on our front porch. It is eastern facing, it gets morning sun, and then it is very protected from wind and very protected from the afternoon sun. It's obviously not getting any because it's covered under a covered porch. and they harden off really well. I usually don't take them out and then bring them in and then take them out and then bring them in. We're not doing that. So this year I'm going to be bringing them directly out onto the patio with the pergola. So the covered pergola will protect them from that harsh light or provide filtered light during the day, and then in the afternoon it'll also be protected because they'll be lower than this stone wall right here, and so they won't get a lot of this harsh evening light here. It's not terrible right now, but also to the extent it's overcast over the next couple days, that's also a great time to move out your seedlings and get them acclimated. I haven't found that seedlings are that difficult to harden off. Now, if I risk losing some because of my methods, so be it. I would rather do that than bring them in and bring them out and bring them in and bring them out and so on and so forth until I am just exhausted of it. And so plants are more resilient than we give them credit. To the extent the nights are still cooler, as long as it's not freezing, I don't bother. A lot of the things that I'm growing from seed will do perfectly fine despite the temperatures being in the upper 30s, high 40s. And if it's going to frost now, that's a little different. If it's going to actually frost, I will bring my seedlings inside or get them covered. They're under this pergola, and so they'll be protected a little more from frost. But if I start to get frost, or I'm concerned about frost, I will put frost fabric over them and probably still leave them outside if the temperatures are not cold enough. Thank you guys for joining me today in the garden. My first perennials arrive next week. And so this weekend is time to, one, after the irrigation gets corrected, finish preparing these beds and get them covered with the contractor paper and mulch. Two, reseed the lawn to the extent I'm able to get that done this weekend. May not happen this weekend. And then prepare to get to planting next week. So thank you guys for joining me. And remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care. Bye.